Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 307.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because I have a feeling that today we're going to answer a question you've been asking. You may be asking silently, you may have been asking loudly, but I think you've been asking. You say, what's that question? Well, some of you might right now be driving on the way to work. Some of you might be wondering, is there a way out? You're like, I've got a really nice job. But I just want out. I want to find a way to not do this anymore because I have these things burning inside of me that I would rather go out there and build my own thing. Well, I have with me today a gentleman who's been able to do that and significantly more because he's been the CFO of a company you may have heard of by the name of Zilp Realty, and you probably have heard of many of the different industries that he's been a part of. He's been inside of the hotel and resorts and hospitality, and we're talking consumer internet. He's been around the block, as they say, and more importantly, he's taken all this experience to create his own thing, and he's going to tell us about it today. So help me welcome none other than Gary Beasley. Gary, you there?
I am, Jay. Thanks.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
So far, so good. So far, so good. But I know that we've got a lot of questions for you, and I've got to ask you the first question because everybody gets the same first question when they get here the first time. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. So, Batman, Robin, Superman, Wonder Woman, etc. And I think superheroes and entrepreneurs have a ton of things in common. Chief among them, we occasionally get dressed up and we put on an imaginary cape and tights and we go out there and we take our product or service to the marketplace and to the world and try to save the people we call customers. And I also believe, just like Superman and just like Wonder Woman, just like all of these individuals, before they were known as we know them today, they had an ordinary life. They had an origin story. They had a beginning. So before you were out there making the difference in the real estate market, before helping companies inside the resort and hotel industries, before doing a lot of, I think what you called the cross-section of technology and real estate and just being there the way that you have, we want to know is, who is Gary Beasley?
Yeah, well, my background, I come from a small town actually in the Midwest in Indiana. And so I guess I grew up, I was fortunate enough not to have a lot of financial resources, but to have a great family and a situation where I was able to really learn, I think, the payoff of hard work and being able to achieve, pretty much whatever you want if you really put forth the effort. And, a lot of times in my life, I'd been told no. And as a successful entrepreneur, you need to be able to look past that and get 99 no's and get to the one yes. And so I guess that's sort of who I am. I like building businesses. I like working on teams, working with people. And I'm not the kind of guy who just wants to sail a ship that's already headed in a certain direction and clip coupons. I was running a public company before this, which was wonderful. It was a great experience to build a company privately and take it public. But running a public company was not as fun and not as interesting as building businesses. I have found the way I'm wired. So that's really why I left that and dove into a startup with which we got some venture capital to start. It was just me and my co-founder and a business idea.
Love it. I love it because you're actually coming from a place where most people are trying to get, which I find very, very interesting. But there's something you said at the beginning that I don't know if enough people were actually paying attention. You said you were fortunate enough to not have come from financial resources. Please expound upon that a little more.
Well, I think that oftentimes if people grow up entitled, they don't make the connection between hard work and success. If you're sort of born into success, I think oftentimes it's a bit of a curse. I happen to go to college with a number of people who came from money who ended up not being very successful. Because they always knew that there was that safety net and motivation. And so for me, I actually, ironically do view it as a blessing, I think, to come up really without any safety net and any resource. I knew I had to make it on my own. And I found it very, very motivating. And then when you do get a little bit of success, it's extremely rewarding. You feel like you really deserved it. And I found it, incrementally, as you get a little bit more and more success, you build confidence around it. Because I think the other thing that happens is if you do sort of come from a position where you already have made it, you don't get that self-validation. And so ironically, I think a lot of the people who have that, some people may say being fortunate being born into that circumstance, never develop the self-confidence that you get if you actually do it yourself.
Interesting. I like your position on this. Now, I'm curious to know, what would you say to someone, because we deal with a number of would-be entrepreneurs, people who want to get started. So let's pretend that someone listening right now is saying, yeah, but Gary, if I just had the money, I would be able to do my business. What would you say to that person?
Well, I would say that there's always money out there for the right idea and the right entrepreneur. So it's not now you can't necessarily start a business that is hugely capital intensive and have if you don't have any resources to get started. But I think a lot of times, if it's a really well thought out plan, there's a lot you can do to prove out a concept with little or no money. And there are plenty of angel investors who will back an entrepreneur with a business plan before the business is even started, if you have the skills and the vision that they believe can pull together a really interesting. Necessarily a requirement to start a lot of businesses. In fact, what I have found is oftentimes investors like the scrappy entrepreneur who's going to work so hard because that individual needs the money so badly and is not going to take no for an answer and is going to find a way to be successful, and oftentimes be successful, with a smaller amount of money if they know they just have a little bit to work with as opposed to a big fat checkbook.
Yeah, agreed. And I had a mentor once who said that money, he was just very direct. He said, money makes people stupid. It's like, look, when you have it, you don't try to do anything differently. You don't necessarily innovate or create anything because you just go buy it and you're done. I'm curious to know if how you have seen your background play into your ability to build businesses, build teams, and possibly see angles that others might not see.
Well, I mean, it's a good question. I think over one's life and one's career, you develop certain ways of looking at the world, certain ways of interacting with people and solving problems. And I guess I have always been a pretty collaborative person. I enjoy kind of a team environment and have always sort of tried to pay it forward and done things for people without expecting anything in return. And I've just, for whatever reason, was raised that way. And what I've always found is that has come back many, many times over, where oftentimes, people are trying to, if someone asks a favor or asks for an introduction, they're looking for some sort of compensation, or, well, what are you going to give me if you do that? I've just never done that in my career or my life, and it's worked out really well. So I think a lot of it is just trying to live your life the right way and being sort of, try to be a good person and try to be straightforward with people and work hard. And the rest sort of takes care of itself. And so for me, I like to think that if you build the right relationships, you have to be smart enough, for sure. But I think emotional intelligence is more important in many cases for being successful than just pure intellect. And so you can be extremely smart and be successful. I'm not saying you can't, but I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs who have really high kind of social IQ and can navigate situations, can think on their feet, can negotiate, can build coalitions. I think it can tell a story, can really kind of get behind their idea and sell it, oftentimes better than somebody who might be smarter, but might not have those kind of skills to kind of pull it all together. It's very hard to be a good entrepreneur. You have to do a lot of things pretty well, which is why it's so hard to start businesses and make them successful. But I think also knowing what you're not good at as well as what you're good at is very important, and being good at getting the right people around you to fill in those gaps, and then treating those people as your partners, and building, like I say, a team where everybody brings something unique to the party. I think is really important. There's nobody who's got all the answers, and I think that's also been part of the way that I've built my career. That's certainly helped.
Got it. Now, it might sound a little off. I'm just curious. Did you play a sport growing up?
I played a number of sports. I grew up in Indiana, so of course I played basketball.
That's like requirement, right?
It is. It is requirement. I played baseball also, but in high school I discovered golf, and so I actually played on my high school golf team for 4 years as well. And so I'm still an avid golfer.
Got it. I was wondering how much team sports were, because just as I listened to you, I know that the education system as it's currently structured doesn't exactly reward collaboration in the same way that it's necessary. And I was like, he's got to have played a sport or two in it. I'm betting it's a team sport. And I had to ask to find out.
Yep. No, it was a big part of, I think, my childhood, and sort of seeing the success of teams where you have might not be as talented as the team you're playing, but and we oftentimes weren't the most talented, but we usually had a pretty good game plan, and everyone worked hard, and so you sort of start to make those connections.
Got it. Excellent. Now, there's something you said that I want to key on. You said an entrepreneur has to be good at many things, which is very true. And you made reference to it being difficult to get a business off the ground, difficult to get it started, which leads me to the thought process. How does someone, like yourself, you had been working in corporate America for a significant period of time. You did the, Northwestern University. You did Stanford School of Business. You did these things. You were on this path, and yet you managed to develop the courage to leave that behind and go do your own thing. A lot of people are stuck right there and unable to do it. Please explain where your courage comes from.
I don't know if it's courage or stupidity.
Right.
It's probably a little. You have to have a little bit of both. A number of people thought I was crazy to leave my last job.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. We're talking a public company. People are trying to become that, and you're like, nah, I don't want that.
Well, in many ways, it's a wonderful thing, and it was a good life experience. I actually feel like I could go back and do that again at some point in my life, and maybe be even better at it, doing it a second time, maybe later in my career with even more entrepreneurial experience. But what I didn't enjoy about it was we were at a point where the business largely stopped innovating, and it was all about sort of delivering quarterly numbers. And what I found was 80% of my day was spent talking about our business and rationalizing what we're doing, and sort of explaining what we're doing to investors and analysts, and traveling around at investor conferences and telling the same story, giving presentations all day and 12 meetings a day with the same pitch book. And it was fine in many respects, an important thing to do. But what I realized, I felt like every day that I was doing that was a day that I wasn't creating something. And so when we came up with the idea to start Roofstock, something just flipped in my mind and said, "Wow!" As I found I was started thinking about starting the business and what I would do and why that might be a better thing for me to do at this point in my career than run this large company. In many ways, I loved the fact we had 600 people and we had a great corporate culture and the business was doing quite well. So all that was great, but there are not that many times in life when you could actually create something from scratch that could make a difference and change the way people do things. And I actually think when we look at what we're good at and what we're maybe not as good at, I think I'm pretty good at building teams and starting things and coming up with new ideas and trying to implement them in all the different things around there. And those skills were being wasted in my old role. I think there's a lot of people who could run public companies very well. I don't want to say that's an easy job, but it's because it's not, but it's a different job where it doesn't take as much creativity to do. And there are, I think, a lot of people who are perhaps better suited, their personality and their goals are better suited to doing that, and could be perfectly content just sort of doing that year after year. And it's great. I mean, so it's a fine way to live a life and build a career. And again, maybe I go do that later in my life, but this is more for me and where I am in my life and career, much more exciting. There's a chance to build an organization and a company and kind of change the way, in this case, real estate is bought and sold using the internet, and kind of creating a really disruptive business model where I'd like to be able to look back in 5 or 10 years and say, wow, I started that company, and then we built something that is pretty significant. And that there's a lot of sort of, just psychic income I get from that, in addition to hopefully building wealth and creating a company that makes money for our investors and our employees. But there's that element beyond the financial that I think for many entrepreneurs is really important. It's just this idea of creating something.
Indeed. Yet I must ask more deeply, because I know someone is listening who wants to do exactly what you're talking about. In fact, I don't know if you plan on re-listening to this, but your tone of voice even changed when you started talking about the prior thing and how it was pretty interesting for me to hear it. I'm like, oh, wow. And you're way more excited, and I can hear it when you start talking about Roofstock. It's really, really present there. And I think that's great. But I also think there's a number of other people who feel exactly that way. Their tone of voice is changing every time they start talking about what they're currently doing, but they keep doing it because they can't figure out or develop the courage to go, okay, I'm going to make this happen. So if I don't ask again, they're going to send me a hate mail saying, Jay, I didn't hear how he was able to develop the courage and actually go. And what did he do? What was the steps to actually say, I mean, some of them are married because they're going home. They're like, hey, honey, guess what? I want to leave this thing we've gotten comfortable with behind and go do this new thing. How do
Yeah.
you make that happen?
Yeah, well, I do have a very supportive wife who fortunately was very supportive, and she it's funny, Jay. She said the same thing that you said when I started talking to her about this business idea. She said, "You should go do it because you're obviously so excited about it. I could just tell by the tone of your voice that this is what you need to do." And so I think what allowed me to take the leap was one that she was obviously supportive, but. I think whenever somebody looks at this, you have to get comfortable with the downside. And I said, well, what? Because there's no way of knowing at any given time whether a decision was right or not. You really don't even know in retrospect because you don't know how your old thing would have ended up going, right? So you have to sort of be comfortable with the scenarios where it doesn't work. And I got myself comfortable with that. And I think a lot of us are the fear when you really kind of break it down. What's the fear? You can't get another job. I think if you're qualified and you're reasonably good at what you're doing and you leave to start something and the worst case is it doesn't work and you're not able to raise money to continue it and you chalk it up to a life experience and then you go back and you package, you dust yourself up, back off, and you go back and you get another job. And I mean that's kind of how I looked at it. I said, well, if the worst thing that could happen is I go try this and it doesn't work, and in a year or two I come back and I get another job, or I try to start something else if I've still got the energy in me to do it, then that's a decent downside. And the upside is it works. And then there's all these degrees of how well it works and on many levels. So you don't get the disproportionate reward without taking some risk, right? So you in my view, you have to leave something to perhaps leave something very good to perhaps find something great sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so it's again, I think this perhaps comes from humble beginnings and all that. And I have I didn't grow up with this sense of entitlement or feeling like I was always going to have money. So when you do that, it gives you confidence that you could go get another job and everything's going to be okay. And I don't know. So that's sort of how I looked at it, got comfortable with the downside and made the leap.
Excellent. Well, hey, if that's the strategy for some, then that it worked for you. Maybe it'll work for someone who's also listening. Now, let's switch tack a little bit and tell us because we've said it a couple of times, we've hinted at it, we haven't exactly told everybody, what is roof stock?
And now I'm still going to make you wait just a little bit longer to find out what roof stock is. But here's what I will say. In every marketplace, regardless of what product or service you want to sell, there's many different types of customers. And there's always the customer who is wanting to learn to do it themselves, the DIY person. There's the person who wants parts of it done for them so that they can then carry it across the finish line to victory. And then there's the other person who wants all of it done for them. Think about that as it relates to your business and or real estate, and you'll be able to see many different ways to use real estate. Because it's one thing to go out there to buy it. It's another to know what you're going to do with it once you have it, because there is no one size fits all, if you haven't figured that out already. Anyway, let's get back to Gary and figure out what is roof stock.
So Roofstock is a marketplace and transaction platform for real estate. And specifically it's investment properties, and we're starting with single family rental homes. So we've built a platform that will allow investors to buy and sell leased rental homes with tenants in place. So you can go onto our site and buy a home that's already cash flowing. And that's a big deal because it's if for those listeners out there who own rental properties have thought about it, typically you have to go out and you have to find a vacant property. Oftentimes it needs some renovation. You have to find a tenant for it. a property manager. You have to get it leased up, and there's a lot of work that goes into that, and some risk associated with it. Where what you can do on Roofstock is simply buy it much more like a stock or a bond. It's already got a tenant in there. You could see what the current cash flow is, and you could buy it in an online environment. And so we're opening up kind of, we're sort of separating, if you will, investing from operations. So you don't need to manage this property yourself. It's managed professionally for you by a local property manager. You just need to figure out how much money you want to allocate into that strategy. And there's financing available, and there are investment advisors we have on staff who could talk to you about the various options. And it's a way to get direct exposure to real estate and earn current cash flow and ride along for the potential home price appreciation. So we're just opening up this asset class, which, by the way, is a large segment of the housing stock. It's about 10% of the housing stock. So it's about $2 trillion of assets are rented homes.
Wow.
And until Roofstock, there really hasn't been a way for these to trade efficiently. So the idea of selling a home with a tenant in place is not necessarily a new one. It does happen occasionally, but it's largely portfolios of homes that get packaged up and sold to investors. But the current MLS infrastructure is designed very well to sell vacant homes to owner occupants, but it doesn't really work generally very well to sell leased homes. It's not really set up for income properties like a commercial property marketing regime would be. So anyway, as a seller, if you think about it, the advantage is you never have to vacate the home. You could put it on Roofstock. We charge a fraction of what traditional brokers charge, and you keep the income right up until the day it sells. And then a new buyer comes in, buys the property, and so you save money on the commission. There's no lost rent because it's leased right up until the day it's sold, and you don't have any expenses associated with getting a property ready for sale, fixing it up, et cetera, to put it on the MLS. So that typically costs 10 to 12% of the value of a home. If you as an owner try to vacate it, you wait for the lease to run out, you renovate it, you put it on and list it between the commission and the lost rent and the CapEx. So and we charge typically 2.5% to our sellers. So it's really a 2.5% versus a 10 or 12% cost to sellers. And then our buyers can come in, and we just charge a modest marketplace fee of 50 basis points. So 0.5% is what we charge buyers.
Wow.
And for that, you get full use of our platform. There are other platforms out there that charge, 7 times what we charge, literally. But it's because we're very efficient about what we do. We're trying to keep the costs down for investors, because ultimately, if you pay a lot of fees and you kind of get loaded up on costs, it hurts your returns. And what we're trying to do is create a marketplace where investors can get really, really good returns, because that's what's going to make it work for both sides. And then sort of where the magic happens is because we charge so much less for sellers, they're willing to sell it for less money, and buyers can come in and buy properties because sellers are selling it for less money. They feel like, and they are getting good deals. So we're finding that there's a really nice match there, where really the savings that we're squeezing out, a lot of the friction and transaction costs gets sort of shared by buyers and sellers, and that's creating some nice momentum for the business.
Got it. Totally like this idea where you're going, but 50 basis points? Did anyone ever go, are you crazy?
Yeah, we met with a potential investor last week who said, "You've got to be kidding me! You're giving your services away." I said, "You know what? It's we're getting paid principally by the seller, so we're getting a couple points on the sell side, 2.5 points. So all in, we're getting 3%, which is plenty for our model because we're doing a lot of volume. What we don't want to do is create barriers for buyers, because this is a new way of buying. If you really think about it, you're buying these homes sight unseen, which in many ways seems crazy. Well, why would I buy a home sight unseen? Well, because you might want to you're living in San Francisco, or you live in Denver or you live in Cleveland and you're buying a home in Orlando. But you can go onto our site and take a virtual 3D tour, look at valuation work, look at all the financial projections, look at a full inspection report. Everything you need is right there that you could review before actually buying the property. Otherwise, in a typical environment, you have to do all that stuff, a lot of that stuff after you get it under contract and you have a inspection period and things like that. So we're turning the whole real estate process on its head and making it such that you can invest in these homes really from anywhere in the world on a level playing field with anybody else. Everyone's got the same information. And the reason we're doing it this way is if you think about one of the challenges of selling leased homes is they're occupied.
Yeah.
Right. So
I was thinking that, but go ahead.
Right. You can't do showings. So what we do is we found a local company that does an animated tour of the interior. If you go onto our site and you do one of the 3D tours, you will see you fly through the home and you see what the home looks like without furniture in it. So we're able to it basically with a little iPad and a robot takes a perfect interior image of the home and puts it in an animated version, so you could see what the floor plan looks like, and there's a 3D floor plan you could see along with it, and then we have the inspection reports. And so by having what the layout is and the condition of the property and factoring all that into the list price, you really don't need to get inside the homes. What we found, I bought thousands of homes in my last company. When I left, I think we had about 15,000 homes in our portfolio. Mm-hmm. The only reason we would need to get inside of them was to see how much work they needed and whether it was a decent floor plan. Because these are investment homes. They're 3-bedroom, 2-bath, pretty plain vanilla properties. You're much more concerned about the cash flow than the color of the kitchen cabinets, right? And so when my co-founder Gregor and I started just disaggregating all of the different pieces, we realized these are the only two things we really need to solve. It's remotely, and then everything else investors should and could be able to do from their desktop. And so with the inspections and the 3D tours, we've gotten it such that the only time we disturb the tenants is once. We'll go through and we'll have our broker walk through it. We'll have the inspector go through and do the inspection report. We'll have the 3D map being taken. And so we disturb the tenant for about an hour, and then we leave, and then we do all of our work, and then it shows up on the website, and they're not disturbed by showings. And if the property doesn't sell, it's no harm, no foul to the existing owner, because that person or that company is still getting the income, and they don't have an unhappy tenant. Or if we were bringing people through all the time and having open houses and things like that, the tenants might be upset and they might move out. And so that was one of the things we had to solve, both because it was helpful for our buy-side customers, but as important for the people looking to sell leased homes. They didn't want us to be bothering their tenants. So we're doing it for both parties.
Got it. Absolutely makes perfect sense. So for those that are in the process, say, of, well, here's what I know. I know there's more than one individual listening to you right now who would like to find out more information. They probably have some property that they might want to get rid of, or maybe want to take that next step. What's going to be the best way for them to track down what you guys are doing, maybe sell some property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. I would encourage them to check out our website. It's a simple address. It's just roofstock.com, just how it sounds, roofstock.com. We have a number of things you could do there. You could just get started now and just start searching. It's called Browse Roofs, which is seeing all of our inventory we have for sale. We also have, if you're interested in learning more about some of the other solutions we have investment funds that you could invest in. So you could go under our investment solutions tab and click real estate funds, and you could see what kind of funds we're offering. And with those, the idea there is some people want to buy individual properties or a collection of properties and have their own portfolio, and others may just want to take some money and invest it directly into a portfolio of homes and not own title to the individual homes, but just have essentially an investment in a fund. And so we do that as well. And so you can check that out. You could look under our services tab, and we offer 1031 exchange programs. So you could exchange out of other types of real estate into our homes. You could sell, for example, a small apartment building and roll the money in tax-free into a portfolio of homes we could construct for you. There's financing available. You can learn about financing options. You can borrow typically up to 80% of the value of these homes as an individual investor through a Fannie Mae program, very attractive rates, 30-year fixed, kind of in the threes, sub 4% interest, which is a wonderful program. You could invest through your IRA. So all these you could learn about through our website. I would encourage you to just go kind of poke around, and then if you'd like to, we have a tab. You could talk to one of our advisors, shoot us an email, chat, give us a call, and we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Excellent. Now, final question here. For those that are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, building their cash flow, wanting to get started, they've got that idea that they think is the next $1 billion idea, or maybe even $1 million. I have a question for you. Occasionally, they're, if you will, they're standing in front of the superhero outfit store. They think they want to get started. And here's what my experience has been. When we tend to think of things that we want to do to make us better, make us bigger, make us that much more influential, we always have that voice that comes to us that's in the back of our head. And occasionally, for some, we're related to that voice, and we hear it a lot when we're trying to make that next move, and we're not quite sure. It's always there, consistently present, and occasionally it feels like it's in the way and won't go away. My question to you is, let's pretend for a moment that the person listening is actually going to do exactly what you suggest. What would you tell them to do in order to make their cash flow build and dream happen?
I would say you have to. I'd say go for it would be my my advice. But that's once you've made that decision, and then say once you make the decision to go for it, go all in. Don't stick one toe in. Don't be tentative. I would say if you're going to be tentative, don't do it at all. But what you have to do is come to that decision, and then once you get there, you have to fully embrace it. You can't look back. There are going to be many dark days, and where if you allow yourself, you'll say, "Wow, why did I leave the boat?" You can't let yourself go there because it's just not constructive, and you just keep working and don't take no for an answer. And you'd be surprised how many people will when hearing a few no's will say, "Well, gosh, these guys must be right. This doesn't make any sense." But eventually, if you're committed to it, and if you really do believe and you're right that the idea has merit, you'll get there. And that's what I would say. It's this grit and persistence that I think we're all trying to teach our kids. I think oftentimes today kids are a little bit coddled and often I think that's one of the hardest things to teach kids. Is to keep that persistence. And I think that's a quality that's not just for kids, but, ultimately for all of us, that is probably as important as anything.
It makes perfect sense. It's not going to be handed to you. I can completely get it. With that being said, I definitely appreciate all the inroads you guys are making and the challenge that you are taking on and how you are letting technology revolutionize what it is that's happening inside the real estate world. I'm still shocked at the 50 basis points, but hey, you've done the math. If it works, guys, that's code for go buy, because that's really, really inexpensive. And I applaud you guys for taking that challenge on and making it easier for more people to actually begin to realize their dream as it relates to being involved inside of real estate, sir.
All right, Jay, thank you. I really appreciate the time. It's great talking to you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? That means you probably should go over to roofstock.com. You heard something that you're like, I need to do that. What does that mean? Do it now, as in right now. As in, yes, you're on the mobile device already. go ahead. It's roofstock.com. Make it happen. Why? Because now is the cheapest real estate it's ever going to be. 10 years from now, it's just all going to be more expensive. You might as well get started today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.